Yeah.
Eventually, hopefully, I'll get around to those.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super cool. I so you finish a book, you're gonna publish it. Take us from the process of finishing the book to publishing. So like, do you find beta readers? Do you have an editor? You mentioned you have an editor you work with. What are kind of the other steps you go through before you actually publish it?
So I usually get 3 or 4 eyes on it. I love to get their opinions. They're always crazy different. So I have those beta readers. And then I go back through myself, which I don't like, but I do it because obviously we have to. And then I send it off to my editor, Laura, for a minute. She gets it back, and then eventually it goes to RB because they're both at the writing services together. And they go through it. A lot of crying in between there. A lot of crying and manic stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually why I published a not so great novel. I might take it back, but I published this weird sci-fantasy novel just because I was so stressed out about this series. I was like, I need an outlet. And I made this goofy talking dog series where he fights God and all this weird stuff because I needed my own outlet for that stuff. And then get it back from editing, go through it, and then you sit on the self-publishing page and you wonder what is actually going to happen with this. Now I'm trying to develop a street team and compete with social media stuff, which is not my forte. I'd really rather not. I really belonged back in like the 1930s before all that stuff, honestly. Not because I can't do it. It's just you're competing with all this craziness. It doesn't even have to do with writing anymore. It has to do more with like how often you can be on social media, which I'm not on it that much. Or doing these weird pages that look pretty and they're beautiful. I don't have the money to compete with that.
Yeah.
And crazy PR boxes and all this stuff. So in between the publishing and the writing part and the editing part, a lot of self-deprecation and crying.
Yeah.
But other than that, just relating my trying to get my creative processes flowing by learning and reading and experiencing and then writing and just kind of enjoying the journey and letting it all go.
Mm-hmm.
I think now I'm at a place in my writing where I went through those ups and downs, especially on social media. It's hard not to. You see these authors that are publishing things. And they're like, oh, I just sold 5 million books my first day as an author. I'm like, oh my gosh. But now I'm at a place where I'm just okay with it, doing my thing, telling my stories and hoping for the best. Yeah, it's mostly just sending it to the editors, hoping they don't come back and say, wow, this is terrible.
Yeah.
Same with the beta readers. But if they tell me something's terrible, then I wait for all of them to give me their feedback. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like my poetry book, all 5 of them came back already and were like, I love all these poems, but these ones stand out. And they all pick different poems, which is actually cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably my favorite part, when your beta readers or whoever's got eyes on it are like, oh, this part's great. And then this part's great. Because then you have a good feeling. Because if they're all like focused on the same 2 or 3 parts of the novel or the poetry or whatever, you're like, oh, I'm not doing something right with the rest of it. But when they're coming back being like, oh, I like different parts. And I just love hearing their opinions on what characters they like, what parts broke their heart, what part could be a little bit better. Because I'm very open to criticism.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's important. I don't like when I only get positive criticism, actually. I like getting a little bit of negative because I'm like, there's got to be something that's not working right. You got to tell me what needs to be fixed a little bit, because someone's going to tell me and it's going to be in a review and then I'm going to be sad.
Yeah, there's always, like I always say that, like, even the things that we consider to be the greatest, there's still something, so when all you hear is, because also when all you hear is positive, then that's also not constructive either. So it's like, how do you want to have a little bit of both? Of obviously you want it to be more positive than negative, but you having a little bit of actual constructive criticism is important for sure.
Right. And that's why I love my editors, because they have no problem telling me. I mean, I've upset them quite a bit because I have a knack of killing a character now and then that they don't want dead. Laura did tell me I couldn't kill a couple specific characters. She said, if you kill them, I'm not reading your books. And I was like, oh, okay. And then, yeah, they're pretty good. And I hound pretty hard, I think, on any reader, being like, hey, you can give me honest feedback. I see a lot of authors being like, I don't know, not taking criticism that well. I think maybe being in university where you go through 4 years of just criticizing the crap out of each other's work, it kind of does. But I think also as an artist, once you put something you love out there, someone's going to pee on it for sure. There's always going to be people peeing on it. And there's going to be people loving it. And you're not going to be everybody's, I hate to say cup of tea, but cup of tea, because I'm a big tea drinker and some tea is great and some tea I don't like at all. And that's okay. So I really appreciate that process. I really appreciate having trusted readers and editors I trust that give me actual feedback, because I know that everything I write is not perfect, and I'm totally prepared for that.
Yeah. I like what you were saying too about just kind of doing your thing and not worrying too much about. I kind of got that to that place with YouTube of like I've been doing it long enough now. I've been out like 3.5 years, almost 4, and I spent a lot of time kind of chasing the algorithm and trying to figure out what to post and get everything just right so you do all the things. And finally, I was like, I'm just gonna make the stuff I want to make, and it's growing slower probably than if I was trying to do the other stuff, but it's way more satisfying. And I think that's the same with writing books. Is like, if you chase the social media, if you chase all that stuff, it just drives you crazy.
Yeah, I almost gave up writing. I even messaged Laura. I was like, I'm done after this book. Like, I'm done. I quit. I don't care anymore, because I was chasing and chasing, and algorithms are always changing even. And
Hmm.
1 second Twitter's popular, I have 18,000 followers, and next everybody's leaving Twitter for Threads, and you start over again. And then you're chasing TikTok, and then you're chasing whatever next app comes up, Blue Sky or whatever, and you're constantly just chasing instead of doing what you actually want to do.
Hmm.
And I think being on there is important to an extent, but I can't imagine Tolkien or George R. R. Martin or Ayn Rand or Edgar Allan Poe, or any of Edgar Allan Poe would be a fun social media person, but I
Yeah.
can't imagine any of them sitting there and being like, oh, I can't write right now. I got to go on social media and put together these PR boxes and send out this newsletter and do this and do this. And then by then you're spending 4 hours doing all this marketing and promotion and whatnot, and you haven't even written anything.
Yeah.
And I'm all about my writing and my process. And if it pays off, great. And if it doesn't, well, then at least I got a bookshelf to put them on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great perspective of like you got to do the art form first before, if you have nothing to market kind of a thing, but also focusing your creative energy on actually doing the thing as opposed like I think we do get a lot of that where, people are posting on social media, and then it's like, but you're not actually doing the thing. So, you know, what are you
Yeah, and
doing?
then you get social media burnout, which I get pretty much every other day. It feels like, honestly.
Mhm.
And a lot of authors say we're not in competition, but being on social media feels like you're in competition, because obviously everybody's posting all the stuff, and you're like, oh my gosh, well, I'm not doing that, or I got to do that,
Mhm.
or whatever, anything like that. And people are doing like sprayed edges and all this fancy stuff, and it makes you be like, oh, do I have to compete with that now? Do I have to do that?
Yeah.
And I finally got to a place, because I don't want to quit writing, and I was in a dark place for a minute. I was like, I hate this. I regret everything, and I was ready to like. I messaged Laura. I was like, I'm gonna burn my books. I'm done with it. I'm smashing my computer. I hate it all. And then I sat there for a while, and I was like, I love writing. I love creating, and somebody's gonna like it eventually, whether it's 10 people or 10,000, whatever. As long as someone enjoys it, and as long as I'm enjoying it. And if I'm not enjoying it, I won't do it. So I've decided, whatever the end is the end, and that'll come regardless of what I do, most likely. So I want to enjoy the ride till I get there. I want to do what I love till I get there, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a quote recently that was it's from C.S. Lewis, and I'm not going to say it correct, but basically he said like don't become a writer to be a writer, become a writer because you want to tell stories. And what he means is like a lot of people fantasize like, "Oh, I'm going to be a writer and I'm going to do it for that reason." But being a writer is really hard, and sticking with it is really hard. So actually finding like why do you actually want to do this, and like what you're saying of like you want to tell stories, you want to do it because you love it, and then if you find success, then great,
Yeah, and I would even say being an indie out there is even harder in some ways, because the market is so big right now and so vast, and because indies now have a bad rep of not editing their work, and taking cheap ways out, and now the whole AI thing. So
Hmm.
I would say right now it's even more difficult to just want to be a writer. And you see people post all the time, I'm going to quit my job by next year, full time writer.
Hmm.
And I don't sure that can be everybody's goal. It probably is everybody's goal, but I think, at least for me, I think for everybody, but for me, the goal is to just put out quality work and hope for the best. And I don't mind going to work every day and coming back and writing a little bit. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think if as long as you created something at the end of the day that you're super happy with, then, that's the goal.
Yeah, exactly.